Well, tonight, we get to talk about a really good 49er, and that is Kyle Juszczyk. Wrote the article on him today, 49ers day off as they rested in Minnesota. They're going to be practicing with the Vikings at 7:58 Pacific time tomorrow. So fast forward to 9:58 Central time. Oddly specific time, I know, but these are two really, really important practices for Trey Lance. He's going to get to face another defense, different looking fronts, different looking secondary, different looking linebacker core. And you could flip that around too. The 49ers defense is going to get to face a different Minnesota offense than the one that the 49ers are used to facing in Lance and Brock Purdy and Nate Sudfeld every single day in practice. In fact, this should be a hell of a test for the 49ers. I've mentioned this a few times, but you've got a wide receiving core down there in Minnesota. You obviously have Adam Thielen. You have Justin Jefferson. They've got some other weapons. So exciting times for the 49ers. They're going to have a chance to work on something that is very different than the first 15 sessions of their training camp have offered them in Minnesota at 7:58 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. I don't know why the 49ers did that or the Vikings did that with the time. I'm sure they jointly decided on this time. But I do know that Kyle Shanahan started training camp practices at an oddly specific time last year, something like 10:18 a.m., I believe. This year he went back to 10:25, a much more square number, right, at 10:25. But 10:18 a.m. last year didn't make much sense to me. And based on some questions that I asked, it was because the 49ers just run such a tightly regimented schedule. So they're a minute here, a minute there, 12 minutes for stretching, that it just ended up happening at 10:18, and Kyle Shanahan wanted to be as efficient with his time as possible. Well, I guess he threw that out the window this year, or it just happened to land on a more square number this year at 10:25 a.m. But the Vikings might be doing something similar. So practice is going to start at 7:58 p.m. Pacific. Briefly lost me, but I'm back, and I'm going to make sure my audio's back. Yeah, we're all back. For some reason, I X'd out of the show, but that was like a 8-second delay. So anyway, practice is starting at an oddly weird time, 7:58 a.m. Pacific. Keep that in mind tomorrow, 2 hours earlier than the posted time for Central, which is around 10. So it's going to start roughly at 8 o'clock tomorrow if you're looking for updates from 49ers and Vikings. Let's talk this guy, Kyle Juszczyk. I have to reshare the screen since I X'd out of this sucker. So just give me 1 second. We could pop him open on the screen. There he is. Kyle Juszczyk flexing longevity with the 49ers. Enters his 10th season, year number 10 for Kyle. He's 31 years old. He turned 31 in April, but he is still going strong. If you want to check out the article with your own eyes on your own screen instead of looking at it through the little video right here, then make sure you go to the chat section and click on the link. I'm going to put it there for you right now because I really want to talk about Kyle today. He's such an important fixture of this 49ers offense, but I feel he doesn't get enough love. And yes, he made the top 100 list for the second straight year. Number 100, barely there. You know, Kyle told a funny story the other day. He said that Dennis Pitta, fellow tight end, obviously he's a Ravens guy and everything, but Kyle knows Dennis well. And Dennis, I guess, made it at number 100 a few years back onto the top 100 list. And Kyle was giving him a hard time. He couldn't even make a bigger dent in the list. He barely squeezed through at number 100. Well, Kyle thinks it's karma because this season, Kyle Juszczyk is number 100 on the NFL top 100 list. But he said that in all seriousness, he's just happy to be on that list because it means a lot to him. Remember, they did away with the fullback position on the All-Pro award a few years back. So Kyle can't win all too many awards because fullbacks aren't considered people too in the NFL. But fullbacks are people too. And as far as the NFL top 100 list, they are eligible to make it because fellow players vote on this. So it has, I think, a little bit more meaning than a lot of awards. And, you know, I'm a sports writer, so I can go ahead and say this. I don't think that awards given by sports writers have as much meaning as awards given by players. And I think there's a reason why year in and year out, we kind of scratch our heads when we look at some of the all-pro selections. I mean, last year, Nick Bosa only getting a few votes, and it's because you're going to have a lot of situations where sports writers just don't know the game as well as fellow players. But if you talk to actual players, they'll tell you, yeah, Nick Bosa is one of the best players in football. And I suppose that they'll also tell you that, yeah, Kyle Juszczyk is one of the best players in football, one of the 100 best. I mean, think about it. To make the NFL and make a 53-man roster, you are elite in terms of your worldwide ability to play football. To make the top 100 of the whole league, right? Even after you cut down rosters, you have 53 players per team times 32 teams, and that's not counting guys that get hurt. So you have a lot more than that. So I could punch it into the calculator here. Let's just do rudimentary numbers. 53 times 32 is 1,696. But I think that you have to build in some, injuries over the course of an actual football season, because this is not injuries off in Madden. So I would say 2,000 players, right? I would say 2,000 steady full-time players in the NFL over the course of a season. Probably even more than that, because the injury rate's really high. Let's just say $2,000 though, and we're not even counting the 90-man rosters, which would make it a lot higher. So out of those 2,000, which is the elite of the elite, they pick the top 100. And Kyle Juszczyk cracked the top 100. So to me, that's a significant accomplishment for Kyle Juszczyk being that high up. Whether you're 99, 100, or in the top 10, I think you're doing something right. So that's one of the reasons why I wrote this piece today on Kyle. Another reason is that I think a lot of people don't realize how tough this guy is. I'm aging myself here. In 2017, Kyle Shanahan's first year as 49ers head coach, when they first brought in Kyle Juszczyk, he missed 2 games. And I don't think that a lot of people realize why exactly he missed those 2 games. Well, this article up on The Athletic that I wrote today goes through the injury that happened. And I think that you're going to develop a new sense of appreciation and respect for Kyle Juszczyk once you learn this, if you didn't know it already. To illustrate the rigors of the fullback position, which sees frequent collisions with much larger defensive linemen, in the first quarter of a 2017 game at Indianapolis, Juszczyk broke 2 transverse processes. Those are the bony protrusions that come from the back of your vertebrae, fractured a rib, and suffered a hematoma on the psoas muscle, which is around the lower back. So 3 injuries there, including a pair of fractures. He broke the transverse processes and then an actual fractured rib, and a hematoma doesn't sound very fun either. Juszczyk, though, this happened the first quarter of the game at Indianapolis. He didn't realize that anything was broken, so he stayed in. He kept playing. They put this corset around him when he was on the sideline that was heated. It was supposed to be therapeutic, and because it heated him up, he was able to defeat some of the pain. He would take it off, and he would run back into the formation, and he'd play more blocking football for the 49ers. He'd go lay his body on bigger defensive linemen. He'd bear the full brunt of all that contact with these 3 separate injuries. Needless to say, the flight home for Kyle Juszczyk from Indianapolis to San Francisco or San Jose, it's not a short one. Needless to say, though, that flight was a painful one. And he still didn't realize how gravely he was injured, though. But once he was in such pain coming home, Kyle Juszczyk decided to, check with doctors. And he actually got sent to the hospital on the Monday night following that game against Indianapolis. Those of you who are trying to remember, well, what was that game against Indy? That was, I think, like week 5, week 6, maybe even week 4, might have been sooner, of the 2017 season. The 49ers tied the game near the end of regulation. It was George Kittle's first career touchdown, and then they lost in overtime to the Colts. It was one of the string of really tough losses at the start of Kyle Shanahan's tenure. But anyway, if we want to talk about context and we want to talk about toughness, these 2 paragraphs of my article are it. Kyle Juszczyk got hurt, 3 separate injuries in the first quarter, played and finished an entire NFL game with those injuries that would later send him to the hospital on Monday night. I believe they call that tough as shit in layman's terms for Kyle Juszczyk in the 2017 season. And the reason I bring that story up is twofold. One, it was 5 years ago, right? We're in 2022 now. This was back in 2017. 2, Kyle Juszczyk has signed a 5-year extension worth a record amount of money for fullbacks, $27 million since then in 2021. I think that's remarkable. In a sport as violent as football, at a position that's as brutal and violent as fullback, the fact that the 49ers not only saw him play out his entire contract at the time that he had signed in 2017, that he had signed this year, but that the 49ers also have rewarded Kyle Juszczyk with a new 5-year contract, a 5-year extension in 2021. The fact that, he's got spring in his step now, that he's buoyant, even though he's taken the kind of beating that I just described with that injury in 2017. That shows some real longevity from Kyle Juszczyk. And he talked about it the other day. He said, I changed the way that I play after 2017 because he realized he couldn't keep on taking that kind of beating and stay in football and also maintain his health for the long term. But the quote from Kyle is awesome. I changed my style of play 5 years ago after my first year here, Juszczyk said on Monday. I feel like I play the position differently than most guys in the league. I don't rest my hat on just being a sledgehammer and just move people with brute force. I really do try to use angles, leverage my mind, my eyes to my advantage. I think that's helped take a lot of the wear and tear off my body. Well, fast forward 5 years from when Kyle Juszczyk started implementing some of those changes here to 2022. And I think that you can confidently say that it's been worth it, that the changes that he's made have actually shown their success on the football field. And, every single Fox or CBS announcer or ESPN or whatever channel the 49ers play on, they're going to tell you that Kyle Juszczyk went to Harvard. So I don't need to repeat it, but I just did. Needless to say, he's smart. And he's figured out a way to make his career longer at one of the most physically demanding positions in one of the most physically demanding sports. And it's a good time to talk about Kyle right now because he's one of the most important 49ers on offense. George Kittle actually had a great quote about Kyle on the NFL 100 video. He said that Kyle is able to fix issues that are caused by screw-ups on the offensive line and with the tight ends before, they actually become issues. So if something's broken up front, Kyle Juszczyk is smart enough and quick enough to fix it. And he's able to change his block, change the angle to seal off any potential issue that the 49ers might have. So imagine how many more busted plays the 49ers would have, broken, blown up run plays without Kyle Juszczyk. And this is before we consider the fact that he's racked up a lot of catches over his time with the 49ers. He's had seasons with 30-plus catches, obviously huge touchdowns. He caught one in Super Bowl 54 against the Chiefs. I think one thing, you have to emphasize with Kyle Juszczyk is that his adaptability is exactly what Kyle Shanahan's system needs. So when he lines up there at a fullback position, there's 20 or 30 snaps a year that he's going to line up at an outside wide receiver position, right? Kyle Juszczyk was a slot receiver at Harvard, so he could do everything. So wherever he lines up, whether it be fullback, outside receiver, slot receiver, tight end, or quarterback. He's lined up at quarterback before he can execute the sneak because he played Kyle Juszczyk played quarterback in JV football in high school. He's got a great story. I got to pop open another story for you guys in a second to make sure you read it. But no matter where he is either a running, like blocking threat or a receiving threat. Or he could run it too. But he's a multifaceted threat no matter where he lines up. Most frequently in the backfield is fullback. And the offense does not get a hint from Kyle Juszczyk, or the defense doesn't get a hint from Kyle Juszczyk as to what the offense is doing. So the 49ers maintain their passing threat, and Juszczyk is still a great blocker, so they obviously maintain their rushing threat. So you can't key in on any one thing based on what Kyle Juszczyk is doing, and that's tremendously valuable to the way that Kyle Shanahan calls these games. He runs over 50% of the time, but he loves to work out a play action. And to have a Swiss Army knife like Kyle Juszczyk, a smart Swiss Army knife on top of that, who's able to understand the blocking angles and understand everybody's role on the field, is just so important within the machine of the 49ers offense. While we're here, I'm going to check out and open up the old article that I wrote on Kyle. This is probably back in 2018 or 2019. This is one of the favorite pieces I've ever written at The Athletic, because we have the ability to get deeper into stories than anywhere else. This is it. There's Kyle Juszczyk in his high school jersey, number 2, the Cloverleaf Colts. It's funny, Juszczyk is not 44, even though it's the number he wears now. His high school rival was this guy named Chris Snook, who I was able to connect with for this story. Nice guy, but they were two larger-than-life characters in, I don't want to say suburban Cleveland. Let's just put rural Ohio, south of Cleveland. Both of them were huge, especially toward the end of their high school careers, and they played for 2 separate teams. Juszczyk right here was number 2, and they had one of the most epic, Friday Night Lights finishes playing against each other. So this story that I wrote In March of 2019 on Kyle Juszczyk, I'm going to put it into the chat section, and Chris Snook, I talked to both of them about their high school rivalry. It reads like a Friday Night Lights novel. Like, it's some of the details that I learned about Ohio high school football were awesome. I mean, we could just go through this and look at, here's the coin toss. Juszczyk number 2, Chris Snook number 44. You can tell how big these guys. Snook went on to play for West Virginia. You can tell how big these guys are for high schoolers, just dwarfing the refs, right? There's Kyle Juszczyk just rumbling. I don't think I see Chris Snook in that picture, but that's Juszczyk in high school. Wouldn't want to tackle him in high school. I mean, here they are trying to tackle him in high school. That's actually Chris Snook. So you had these two high school football rivals. Now, obviously, Snook is cheering Juszczyk along from afar. Didn't like each other in high school, but a lot of mutual respect. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers of this show, former high school football players, I'm sure you have a story like that too. Some guy that you went toe-to-toe with in high school. Imagine if the guy that you went toe-to-toe with ended up being a 10-year NFL vet. That's where Juszczyk is going to now. Multiple-time Pro Bowler, top 100 player. It's been pretty cool for Chris Snook to watch that from afar. And I think that, the fact that I was able to find both of those guys, write this article, I think it brought them back in touch. I think they started following each other on social media or whatever again. And it was really cool to be able to do that in 2019. So go ahead and check that out. That's up there on The Athletic. You could still subscribe to that, even though it was written in 2019. But obviously, I wrote a piece here about Kyle Juszczyk entering year 10. And why don't we shout out to the thumbnail here? Mike made the thumbnail. That's an awesome thumbnail. We can make that one big. That's Juszczyk going over the top against the Minnesota Vikings. I believe that was last season, right? Did he score a touchdown against the Vikings going over the top? What a photo. And that's going to happen with these 49ers Vikings joint practices starting at that really odd time of 7:58 p.m. Pacific. Kyle Juszczyk going to try to go back over the top, but I don't think they'll be tackling live to the ground. So maybe we won't see that. I don't expect him to play in the game on Saturday. And that leads me to something really interesting. In the article, that's, maybe let me just put it back up so that everybody can check it out. By the way, if you want the link to this sucker, I'm going to put that in the chat section right now. In the article, I talk about Josh Hokett, and the 49ers just waived Josh Hokett. And I think the 49ers want to bring back Josh Hokett, but they won't be able to do so until the practice squad opens up, and that's not until 2 weeks from now. So the 49ers actually won't have a fullback on their roster for Saturday's game. And based on everything that I've gathered and Kyle Shanahan has said, they're not going to be playing starters like Kyle Juszczyk in Saturday's game. So assuming they're not going to play Kyle Juszczyk on Saturday and they don't have a second fullback, what are they going to do? Is Kyle Shanahan just going to not run the fullback, even though that's his offensive system? Or is he going to audition a very intriguing former college fullback, a former junior college fullback, who's now an offensive lineman in the role on Saturday? That's Jason Poe. Speaking of Jason Poe, maybe I should pop him up on the screen. Those of you who aren't familiar with Jason Poe, you soon will be. And I'm sure that my viewers are familiar with Jason Poe because the guy has made waves as a 53-man long shot. He has only improved his odds at this point. We could pop him open on the screen there. There he is. Jason Poe vies for a roster spot with his unique versatility. Now, I didn't ask Kyle this, but I should have asked him about Poe. Because Poe, when he played fullback we could even open it up here. We could watch Poe's tape here. When he played fullback at Hutchinson Community College, he showed the ability to move. He wasn't quite 300 pounds, but he is 300 pounds for this video. And at 300 pounds, I mean, he's got some scary movement skills. So let's watch Jason Poe. This is him coming out of the backfield. This is obviously at Mercer, where he played the end of his college career. Also played for Lenore Ryan. Now, 300 pounds to be able to run like this is special. It just doesn't happen. It's not run of the mill. He catches some patterns that I wouldn't quite call them go patterns. A nice little in-breaker there. But he catches some over-the-shoulder passes a little bit later. Here's one of them. Beautiful. Drops it in over the shoulder. I got to shout out to the Mercer guy who's throwing the ball too. Not bad. I mean, Poe even had to slow down for that one. So Poe's moving. 4.8940. So 4.940 running a post here. I mean, now he's working on center stuff. This guy could theoretically do some H-back stuff for the 49ers. And I don't know if Kyle is thinking it or not, right? But I have to wonder right now, since they don't have Hokett on the roster, since Juszczyk probably won't play on Saturday, and since Kyle's going to be, running an exhibition for all of these backups, I have to wonder if he's going to, at least try to see what Jason Poe can do. Since Poe is, I talked about it a lot. He's the shortest offensive lineman in the National Football League. He's impressed us a lot with his low center of gravity, but the highest he's worked up is the second team. The arm length is an issue just because he's shorter. You want the arms to be longer to keep defensive linemen at bay. His way of making the roster might actually be Swiss Army knife. You love the versatility that Jason Poe brings to the table, and he showcased it at a blocking position so far because he can get the places that a lot of offensive guards can't just because of how quick he is. But 53-man rosters aren't big, and position coaches in different corners of the roster might want a versatile player to help execute a few tasks per game. And I would not be surprised if Anthony Lynn wanted this guy, Jason Poe, based on the way that you just saw him running, would not be surprised if he wanted him to be executing some of that backfield stuff. So I'm just tossing it out there. Maybe I'm giving the 49ers coaching staff an idea. I doubt it. I've already interviewed them, talked about this kind of stuff. They didn't, play their cards one way or the other. But there is tape, and I just showed you the tape of Jason Poe running around and looking really impressive at 300 pounds. And he still is on this roster even after the 85-man cut down. He still has impressed everybody with his athleticism and his attitude. And Saturday might mark a unique opportunity for the 49ers to experiment a little bit. So why don't we keep our eyes on Jason Poe come this Saturday? All right, back to Juszczyk. Year 10, he's on a $27 million deal. I want to talk about Trey Lance and Kyle Juszczyk because I said I'm going to preview these 49ers Vikings practices. Lance has been up and he's been down. He's been up and he's been down. Basically everything that you'd expect out of a quarterback with so little starting experience. Now the storylines write themselves here, right? Trey is from Marshall, Minnesota, small town in the state where the 49ers are going to be practicing on Wednesday and Thursday. Trey's not going to play on Saturday, so it's more about these practices back in his home state. He went from Minnesota, where he didn't, in high school, he didn't pass a whole lot, to North Dakota State, where he actually didn't pass a whole lot, but passed more than he did in high school, to the 49ers. If we go back to Trey's days in high school in Marshall, Minnesota, and we combine all the pass attempts that he took there with the pass attempts that he took at North Dakota State, which is somewhere like between 300 and 400, I believe. I believe it's 389, but it might be a less because I don't know if that counts the 49ers number. So if we combine the high school, the college, and his limited amount of in-game reps in the pros, Trey Lance is at about 500 throws since he started playing quarterback, since high school, basically. Tom Brady had more throwing attempts last season. So that's how raw Trey Lance is. That's why he's such an exciting prospect, because he's already doing cool stuff despite being that raw. And that's what makes this homecoming to practice against the Vikings really cool, because Trey is coming back just like 500 pass attempts later, right? To, back to the hometown NFL team. Now, Marshall and Minneapolis, not in the same place. I get it. But this is going to be compelling stuff. Like we get to see Trey lead an offense against another defense, not the 49ers defense, for snap after snap after snap at this practice. And all they want is more consistency. It's been up, it's been down. 49ers trying to raise the floor to bring it closer to the ceiling to make him more consistent. Now, how's he going to play? I'm not sure. I noted in another show, and I've noted on Twitter. By the way, speaking of Twitter, you guys should do this. Follow along on Twitter. I've noted that there's been a big difference between Trey Lance in scripted portions of practice and in move the ball portions of practice. The scripted stuff that Kyle Shanahan predetermines, his completion percentage has been really low. It's been like 47%. But then you move to move the ball, which is more like a real game where the 49ers are calling plays based on down and distance. They're trying to beat the defense in front of them. Trey's up to like 65%. That's like a 20-point swing. So, there have been issues with his accuracy, but there are real signs at this point that this kid is a gamer, that he shows up and he gets better during games. And Kyle Shanahan will be the first to tell you that type of talent exists. He's a gamer, right? What data points do we have? We have the game against Arizona that he played with a broken finger, and I thought acquitted himself well in that game, given the fact he was playing with a broken finger. He was running without his helmet on. I mean, he showed a lot of heart in that game against the Cardinals. They moved the ball in that game against the Cardinals. The 49ers suffered, some bad breaks in that game. A lot of fourth down conversions didn't go their way, including one at the goal line where, I thought Trey took a vicious hit. They ran Trey 16 times because he had a broken finger. So anyway, I thought he acquitted himself well, given the circumstances. And then they beat the Texans with a monster second half from Trey Lance, where he really learned from his errors in the first half and let it rip in the second half. So we've had those two samples of game experience for Trey, right? And then we have the third sample of pregame season experience from this season with how he looked on Friday against the Packers. And he didn't look bad. Now, yes, it wasn't perfect. The rating was perfect because the rating is a simple stat, but he missed it out to Danny Gray. He threw too high to Dwell. He made him jump in the flat. But the throw to Danny Gray on the bomb, I'm talking about the deep out to Gray that he missed. The bomb, the 76-yard touchdown, thing of beauty. Wasn't great pass protection, stepped up in the pocket. Earlier, he shuffled up in the pocket, picked up close to a first down, I think. I forgot if it was past the chains or before them, but it was a good decision, good gain, and slid for the first time in his life. I mean, it was a good performance from Trey Lance on Friday. And you go back to last season's game performance, it was a good performance against the Houston Texans. And then you look at camp this year, he's been good and moved the ball. He's been worse in the scripted portions. But what's the pattern? Anytime it gets closer to actual football, Trey Lance has played better. So it's going to be closer to actual football against the Vikings on Wednesday and Thursday. I can tell you that much. And that's why this is going to be so exciting for the 49ers. So this starts, for those of you just joining, 7:58 a.m. Pacific time. Oddly specific, but hey, that's what's going on. Those of you who are new, welcome to our 2022 49ers coverage. Make sure you subscribe to The Athletic through the link that I put in the chat section. The latest article is this one on Kyle Juszczyk, where I also talk about Trey Lance. Juszczyk is important because he's obviously a brainiac, but he obviously conceals a lot of the offense's mistakes. So with Trey Lance in there, you want somebody as rock solid as Kyle Juszczyk on the offense. And hey, the 49ers, they're probably going to run even more. You thought they ran a lot with Jimmy Garoppolo's quarterback. They're running even more, and they're going to be more creative in the run game with Trey Lance as quarterback. And if that's the case, well, Kyle Juszczyk, he's got such an important role because you want to sell run-pass adaptability so that the defense doesn't know what to look for. And that's going to make Kyle really, really important in Kyle Shanahan's offense this year. Yep, I am Dr. Disrespect tall. We're about the same height. Talk to Dr. Disrespect. He might be a little bit taller than me. I don't know if he's 6'8", somewhere between 6'6" and 6'8", though. Dude's a stud, man. Yeah, I mean, he launched that ball far at 49ers practice. That was a cool experience. I didn't know who he was until then. I don't know if that's disrespectful of me, pun intended, but I had a good time. I know who he is now. I follow him on social media. And I have a lot of friends who were like, "Oh my God, did you get a picture with him?" The answer is no. I'm not going to go to games and get pictures of people. I'm here to cover the event. But it was cool talking to him. That's for sure. Figuring out who he was. And I am more educated now. That's for sure. I mean, this guy, Dr. Disrespect's a big deal. He's a big deal. I post one picture of Dr. Disrespect, thousands of likes. I'm like, okay. Once I posted that picture, I better go talk to this guy. I better go find out who this is, because the online community certainly did. All right. Yeah, I think I'm a little taller than George. We're about this. I would say we're about the same height. We'll figure that out. We'll have to figure that out in the locker room this year. I think he's about 6'5". I'm 6'5" and a half. Maybe George is 6'5" and a half. I don't know. He's definitely got 40 pounds on me. I'm like 205, so he's what, 240, 245. George is a built dude, that's for sure. He's got 20,000 people watching his YouTube stream all the time. And doesn't he like go live for like eight hours like at a time just playing the game? That's why he's got the gamer glasses, right? I know it's kind of a shtick, but he's got to have the glasses if he's watching a screen for that long. He's looking at that for sure. But it was cool to see him throw the football that far. He is a legend in the gamer community. I have obviously known that right now. All right, guys, cool. Let me. What else do we want to talk about today? Let me go back to these. Make sure you sub to the Athletic. I have that Juszczyk article in there. Obviously, I'm not in my usual location right now, so I apologize if the internet is a little bit slower. Get back to a hardwired connection tomorrow. I've talked about, the 49ers injuries in the roster. Those of you who are, we could go back to it today. This is the 90-man depth chart. Why don't we make this wider? Why don't we talk about some of this stuff? The 49ers cut to 85. Hokett's gone for right now, so Juszczyk's the only fullback up here. They have some injury issues. They're all in pink on this 90-man roster. Defensive line has fewer guys than it did before. That's 11 plus 3, 14. Kalia Davis on PUP, that'd be 15. And then Maurice Hurst on IR, that's 16, but only 14 available defensive linemen. By the way, Kalia Davis, he's looking, I don't know if he'll be back this year or not, the rookie out of Central Florida. But for defensive tackle, this was noteworthy. Jimmy Garoppolo was off on the side, as he has been at 49ers practice, tossing the football around. And, oops, I accidentally closed the roster there for you guys. And so Jimmy's tossing the football around. And the defensive tackle, the rookie DT, Kalia Davis, 310-pounder, walks onto the side field. And he's like, I want to run a bomb. He wants to run a deep end. So Jimmy's like, okay. So Kalia runs a streak. Jimmy throws a deep ball to him. Kalia Davis, the 310-pound defensive tackle, about 40 to 45 yards downfield, catches the bomb in stride. And this guy's coming off an ACL tear. He's at 310 pounds, coming off an ACL tear, catches a bomb in stride from Jimmy Garoppolo off on the side at 49ers practice. And at this point, I'm like, oh, now I see what they meant by athletic defensive tackle. Remember, I verified this with Chris Kasarik. I've never seen it. I asked Chris if he's ever seen it. Have you ever seen an inside stack linebacker at the college level, D1 college level, move to defensive tackle and play at the NFL level at defensive tackle? Kalia Davis got drafted as a defensive tackle, and he moved from inside stack linebacker. That is a position transition you just do not see. You'll see outside linebacker to defensive end. You might see stack inside linebacker move to some kind of outside linebacker spot. That's way more rare. But as far as inside linebacker to defensive tackle, those are the two opposite ends of the spectrum in the front seven. You can't get any more different within the front seven than inside linebacker, defensive tackle. But if you watch the game tape for Kalia Davis, cut off again. But if you watch the game tape for Kalia Davis, this guy is a unique defensive tackle. And I don't know if that had anything to do with him tearing his ACL. Sometimes guys that, try to add a lot of explosiveness, even with a lot of weight, that could lead to stress on the ligaments. But Kalia is, if he could stay healthy and he could show some of the explosiveness that he did, he looked different as a defensive tackle. His tackling form was more like a linebacker's, really fluid and aggressive. He could really be a special player for the 49ers. And that's something that I noticed when he caught that bomb from Jimmy off to the side at practice the other day. So anyway, it's about time for me to sign off. We've been on for over half an hour. Good times before the 49ers take on the Vikings. Joint practices start at 7:58 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. So time to sign off for the night here on the eve of joint practices, 49ers against Minnesota. Make sure to sub to the Athletic, sub to the channel, follow along on Twitter. Articles in the chat section. Juszczyk is who I wrote about today. We'll be watching him on Wednesday and Thursday in conjunction with Trey Lance and that 49ers defense against the Minnesota Vikings. All right, everybody, join the movement. Sub to the channel. We'll talk to you all soon. Take care. Thank you for joining.